everyone, and thank you for joining my presentation. My name is Andre DeYoung, and I did my author-illustrator project on the one and only Maurice Sendak. He was both an author and an illustrator, You can see in the background here that Where the Wild Things Are was his most famous work, and just the illustration and the storyline that went along with it was just so wonderful. So let the Wild Rumpus start. Maurice Sendak was born Maurice Bernard Sendak, June 10, 1928, in Brooklyn, New York, to some Polish Jewish immigrant parents. He had grown up during the Depression and World War II, where a lot of his family actually were involved in the Holocaust, and many of them had actually perished as a result of being left over there and not immigrating. He developed many health problems as he was growing up and was mostly confined to his bed. By the age of 12, he saw Fantasia and just fell in love and wanted to become an illustrator. So his first love was just to draw, and then being an author came afterwards. So in return for a passing grade, because he was bedridden, he wasn't doing so well in his academics, he got his first publication of his illustrations in his physics teacher book, which is The Atomics for the Millions, in 1947. So that was kind of like a change off. He would do the illustrations for his books, and then that was actually even better. He got a passing grade and he got published. So that was in 1947, which is when his first publication was of his work. His first commission job was at FAO Schwartz in New York. He was a window dresser, so he made the windows look appealing, trying to get people to come in and buy things. One Christmas, he took a risk and decided to put some of his own works up in the windows. And it actually benefited him because an editor came up to him, commissioned him for his work, and he ended up illustrating over more than 40 books throughout the 1950s, of which includes the Elsie Homeland Minerick's Little Bear series. Over on the right here, you can see the pictures were by Maurice Sendak. You can see Little Bear here and Mama Bear. His illustrations were heavily based off of English Victorian artists William Blake as well as the Brothers Grimm. And though he had 4 published works previous to Where the Wild Things Are, he wasn't truly recognized until this book came out. Being both the author and the illustrator, it was in 1963 that he was really recognized. His first work was Kenny's Window in 1956, so you can see there was kind of like a 7-year gap of his work. I mean, he had been working that 7 years, but this was the only one that really kind of stood out. But he was still a wonderful, wonderful author and illustrator even past that. In his personal life, he found love with the psychoanalyst, Dr. Eugene Glynn, who had been his partner for 50 years. He tried to keep his personal life a secret from his parents because he felt that they'd be happier knowing if he were straight. In fact, he was quoted that all I wanted was to be straight so my parents could be happy. They never knew. So he never told them, but being parents, they would have understood. Maybe living in a different time, he would have been a little bit scared. But he lived so happily with Eugene for 50 years. How many people can say that? In 2007, though, he had passed away, and after his death, Sendak donated $1 million to the Jewish Board of Family and Children's Services in the memory of Glynn, because he had treated so many young children there and they loved him, and he was such a great doctor. So in his memory, to keep it going, he donated the $1 million, which is kind of romantic in a way. Early morning on May 8th, 2012, Danbury, Connecticut, Sendak passed away from complications of a stroke. He was such a wonderful man that upon his death, many gave remembrances of his work, his illustrations, his stories, just him being a great person in general. The New York Times called Sendak the most important children's book artist of the 20th century. And you can see in this picture here that he was just super full of life, got spunk, kind of a little sassy, and just super fun to be around. That would have been great to just meet him. He looks like a character. He if you ever get a chance to, I should have put it on here, but Stephen Colbert interviewed him about Where the Wild Things Are, and it was just super great. He's super on top of it, really quick, because Stephen Colbert's little jokes, he's quick to catch on and shoot them right back. And I just thought this was a really great little remembrance for him, quoting from his book and then having Max there snickering, and the quote is, "And he sailed off through the night and day, and in and out of weeks, and almost over a year, to where the wild things are." That was really, really nice remembrances. There were so many of those that were on the internet, but there just was enough time to just put them up, so I just put that one up. Some honors and honors, awards, and remarkable achievements. Of course, where the wild things are. Offered great accredited acclaim. Earned him the Caldecott Medal from the American Library Association in 1964 for most distinguished American picture book for children. He was also runner-up about 7 times from 1954 to 1982 for the same award. So he's continuously impressing. Some other awards and honors that he received was the Hans Christian Andersen Award for Children's Book Illustration in 1970, 1982 National Book Award in the picture books category for Outside Over There, his own book. The Laura Ingalls Wilder Medal for American Children's Literature in 1983, the National Medal of Arts in 1996, and 2003 Astrid Lindgren Memorial Award for Children's Literature. Also in North Hollywood, an elementary school was named after him in honor of him for just the wonderful accomplishments and wonderful writings and illustrations that he had done. As you can see, it spanned from like 1954 through 2003 of all the wonderful things that he's done. So he was just on it. He was really sharp. You can see right here, we've got some of his more memorable works and illustrations that you guys might know. He wrote over 20 books, including the award-winning Where the Wild Things Are over here on the left. As you know, super memorable. They actually made a movie about it. So a lot of people know about it, if not everyone nowadays, because based on the movie, kind of gets it out there, gets people into the book. The Nutshell of Library series also is part of a four book series. It's Alligators Are Around, One Was Johnny, Chicken Soup with Rice, and Pierre are the 4 books that are in those series. And then another one that's really popular, or well known I should say, is In the Night Kitchen, which was actually one of the more controversial ones because of the illustrations in it. It showed the little boy was nude and he was in the kitchen, and you can see, you know, he was just being a small child, you know, who really wore like clothes when they were that young. It's kind of like, that's the basis of why it was so controversial. It's based on him drawing this character nude. He also illustrated over 70 books that included Nutcracker over here in the bottom left corner. You can see kind of some of the similarities of the drawing style that he has with the shading, with Where the Wild Things Are and things like that. That book was by E.T.A. Hoffman. You can see again the Little Bear series by Elsie Homeland Minerick. In here in the middle, you can see that there are 3 of them. The Father Bear Comes Home, Little Bear's Friend, and Little Bear, the original right there. As well as Illustrating the Golden Key by George MacDonald over here in the bottom right. This is more of his darker, less children-like, I guess you can say, sort of drawing. He was not your average children's book writer. He was not a typical, like I said, children's writer. He writes about like the realities of life, the darkness of the world, the lessons you can learn from making bad choices, and the wonderful things that you can do if you make the right ones, even though you have to go through trials and tribulations to figure it out eventually. You know, his books have morals in them, and he knew that. He knew everything that he wrote and everything that he drew related to each other and mirrored it so well that he's able to incorporate both children and adults in these books, because none of them were truly targeted for children. He was just thrown into that category because they happened to fall into it. For example, these are some of his quotes that I just felt were super great. Totally like genuine, no BS involved. The top one here: "You cannot write for children. They're much too complicated. You can only write books that are of interest to them." So this is like true speaking from his heart. Like, he did not write for children. He just wrote what he wanted to write, they happened to intrigue children, and he was molded into that category, you could say. Along those lines, this middle one is great. Excuse the profanity in it. It says, "I refuse to lie to children. I refuse to cater to the bullshit of innocence," which is so great because nowadays, I mean, a lot of the shows and children's books that we see really just try and sugarcoat everything for children. It's what are the realities? What are the fantasies? There's not an easy difference, you can't really differentiate the two because of the children's books out there really just trying to sugarcoat it, like I said before. And he believed that just telling the truth was easier. They got it. They were still intrigued. They didn't get scared. It's just the way of life. And this bottom one here, let me see if I can try and scroll it down so you can see it. This is like one of my favorite ones. "Children do live in fantasy and reality. They move back and forth very easily in a way we no longer remember how to do." And that's so wonderful. Like, as adults, you forget that when you were growing up, you played pretend, you had imaginary friends, you had like a couch, some cushions, you made a fort and it became a castle. It's, don't touch the lava because it'll burn you, but it's really just a playground with tan bark. But if you touch the tan bark, then heaven forbid, you burn. So it's just kind of like great way to like incorporate his feelings about the world and how children are, because they just have such great imaginations that it gets lost along the way of growing up. And then these are just the works cited. So many great articles and books, but only a few that I can actually really incorporate in this presentation. I recommend reading these books, his illustrations. There's a good book out there. It was just his illustrations. I wasn't able to get my hands on it, but I was able to kind of get a preview of it on Google, I believe. But so great. I really enjoyed doing this research because I had only known where the wild things are, and this just really opened my eyes to the realities that he was trying to portray through books that eventually became aimed towards children, but now since they are aimed at children, they're able to learn from them and know that life isn't all candies and lollipops and sprinkles. It's sometimes dark. It's tough out there. You need to figure out what you need to do and make the right choices in order to do it. Sometimes you make the wrong ones, but you learn from them, and then you keep going. You dust yourself off. So I feel like this has just been a really great class, and I really appreciate you guys honing in, and I actually learned a lot from you all, so I really appreciate everything, and I hope you enjoyed the presentation. Bye!